are good to go. Whether or not we have the correct link is another question. But it is another day of NHL DFS. This is the NHL DFS strategy show from Awesemo.com, presented by SuperDraft. I'm joined by a special guest. You guys might remember him from 5 months ago. Michael Clifford, Slim Cliffy. What's up, man?
Not a whole lot. Just trying to get by on a day-to-day basis. I think, like most people, really, really thankful to have hockey and baseball and basketball back on the TV because I was starting to go a little bit stir crazy, you could say.
Yeah, for sure. I was that same way. Let's see if we can find out where we're streaming from. Uh, but yeah, do you want to talk about just your kind of general thoughts while I get this figured out? Your general thoughts on you know playoff hockey. Like, what are some of the differences we are going to see with this no fans, or from the reporting aspect? Kind of give your thoughts on what you've seen so far in the first couple days.
Yeah, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I mean, this is uncharted territory for everybody, right? Like, this is something that hasn't happened in 100 years. So, um, what exactly we're supposed to expect, I don't think anybody really knew. But what I saw from the first couple of days is that it seems pretty obvious that the teams that are in the play-ins, and by that I mean like Columbus and Toronto, or Vancouver and Minnesota, like those kinds of teams that are trying to get to the final round of 16, they're playing these like playoff games. And the teams that are playing for seeding, today we have Dallas and Vegas on the slate, for example. Yesterday was Boston and Philly, Colorado and St. Louis. Those teams fighting for seeding, it really seems like they don't care. And I, it's kind of hard to blame them. Like, obviously, there are easier teams to play, in the first round. If Montreal, something happens, Montreal gets through Pittsburgh, you definitely want to play them over a team like Toronto. But at the same time, like, if you're talking about two teams like Minnesota and Nashville, or Columbus and the Islanders, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. So I think the teams that are playing the round robins, they're playing them just to kind of get through them, get their legs under them, get a little bit of chemistry, make sure they don't get hurt. I think more than anything. Um, we've seen the injuries pile up over in baseball, and that's what's going to happen when you shove guys back into a professional athletic setting after doing nothing for 5 months. And I think teams are trying to avoid that in the NHL. I mean, I watched the entire Boston Philly game in the first two periods of St. Louis, Colorado, and especially Boston Philly. Like, those teams, you'd expect some fights, you'd expect some hard hits, you'd expect guys taking runs at each other, maybe some deep, cheap slashes and stuff like that. There's none of that. Like, it was kind of like it was a gentleman's agreement not to injure each other, to make sure everybody can make it to the second round. And I think that's pretty important to note. Now, obviously, we're talking about a sample size of a handful of games. But at the same time, I think you kind of have to take those chances in DFS this spring, like I said, because this is uncharted territory for anybody. I just don't see why you wouldn't take a chance like that if you think you have an edge, just to go in that direction, because finding edges in hockey is hard. I mean, most people are working with relatively the same information. I mean, it's kind of the same in all sports, but especially where in the NHL, one of the edges would be information from the media, because before the quarantine, you'd have to dig through tons of media reports and articles, and you go to the team website, you go to the NHL.com main website, you go to the Athletic, you go to the OC Register, you go to the Miami Herald, you go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the bubble, it's just the team PR. Like, they're going to tell you who's in, who's out, who's injured, who's not. They're not going to tell you what the injury is or how long they're going to be out. So that edge is gone. So I feel like if you want to avoid, not necessarily avoid the teams that are doing the round robin seedings, today we have Washington, Tampa, and Dallas, Vegas. Not necessarily that you have to avoid them, but I wouldn't like be going gung ho saying, "Oh my God, this is a great matchup. I have to have 50% of this guy, or I have to have 60% of this guy, or I have to have 75% of this goalie." Like I just wouldn't be doing that, especially with those round robin matchups. Like I said, because maybe something changes in games 2 or game 3 or whatever as they move along. But it certainly seemed in the first games that these teams really had no interest in playing at 100% like the playing teams did.
Yeah, and that's something, we'll get a few more games of a sample, but if you can react to that pretty early, like, if you're onto something there and you can kind of avoid most of the parts of the games that are the round robin games and not the ones that, not that the round robin games don't matter, but they matter a little bit less because all those guys need to stay healthy for next week when they start the normal 16 team playoff. Like those teams, it's not win or go home, and it's not a dire situation. So, always nice to get your thoughts on something like that, because from a real life hockey perspective, things are just going to be different as well, and that can help us with DFS. So it's been a good first couple days. Hopefully we can continue this trend, and I think I got the streaming figured out, so we're good to go there. Welcome everybody again if you're just tuning in. This is the NHL DFS strategy show. I will get the stream figured out tomorrow. We keep going to the wrong spot, so thanks for bearing with us as we come back from a long sports hiatus. We are presented by SuperDraft. Been having some fun playing some NHL DFS over there. You can use promo code Awesemo10 to get $10 in SuperDraft cash. You can use that for DFS. If you don't like salary caps, you just want to play all your favorite players, SuperDraft is a great place to do that. And they had a ton of overlay over the last couple days. So the contests are a little bit smaller, but still appealing if you're trying to build the bankroll. They do the multiplier over there instead of salary. So you can literally, if you want to play McDavid, Draisaitl, Clefbaum, Patrick Kane, and whoever else, you certainly can. But the playing field gets even pretty easily if you get a guy with a 1.5 or 1.75 multiplier, and he scores a goal. So I really like playing over there. I'm using FC to do it. It's pretty easy. I've been using the projections for DraftKings and FanDuel, and then on FC you can just use the multiplier as well. So pretty low maintenance, but it's a good place to play. So go support SuperDraft. We've also got that's the cheat sheet for today. That's always free if you want to go check that out. Alex's player and stack rankings are the free piece of premium content for today. So I will drop this link in chat, and then we'll get started on this 5-game slate we got. All right, here we go. Here is the link to the player and stack rankings. You can use those. Those are behind the paywall, obviously. And then one more thing before we get started, promo code NHL is back, is how you get 50% off your first month of NHL Monthly. So if you're looking to join us for the next few months, this kind of sprint to the end of the season, promo code NHL is back. We'll get you half off the first month. Pretty good deal. Let's get into it. I've got the lineup builder pulled up here. Let's go with Jets and Flames. This one will lock at 2:30 Eastern on DK. The lock times are a little bit different on DraftKings and FanDuel, and then at SuperDraft as well. So SuperDraft is locking at 4 Eastern, I believe. Yep, 4 Eastern, 3 my time. DK will lock at 1:30 my time, 2:30 Eastern. And then FanDuel is locking at the start of this Vegas game, at least their main slate. So they're locking at 6:30 Eastern. I'm not exactly sure why, but a bunch of different lock times over here. And all of them will include the Edmonton-Chicago game. So that's kind of the main event. That's the last game of the night, the one everyone's excited for. Connor Hellebuck, Cam Talbot in the first game, 2.5 implied total for the Jets, 3 for the Flames. Flames took game 1, got down early. There were a couple injuries on the Jets side. Scheifele and Laine are kind of questionable here, so not exactly sure what's going on with them. this moment, but we should know before lock, and you should be able to recrunch or redo some of your lineups depending on how you build prior to the slate locking, which is good news. So it's good that this is the first game. Just be willing and able to swap at lock, no matter what stakes you're playing at. I think late swap is going to be huge for this slate. It's going to be huge for all these first few slates, at least in the qualifying round. And I've already seen it pay off a couple times with the Kubalik thing on Saturday. Had a couple goals, bunch of points. I think he was the highest scoring player on DK. So just be aware of late swap. I think in general you should change line combinations, all else being equal, to get unique. But that's just how I try to approach it when I can. Anyways, Backlund, Kachuk, Mangiapane probably going to see the most time against Wheeler and Connor if they're together. I'm not sure what's going to happen if they're split up and Scheifele and Line are out. But what are your overall thoughts on this game for DFS here, Cliffy?
I mean, it seems pretty likely that, I mean, even with Chicago and Edmonton on the slate, it seems reasonable to assume that Calgary is going to be the Calgary one's going to be the highest owned line on the slate, right? I think we have our projections have the top line plus Giordano as the 4 highest owned players. So I can't disagree with that, right? Like Winnipeg is with Scheifele and Laine in the lineup, and Scheifele, you could argue, is their only NHL caliber center as it is. Even with Scheifele and Laine in the lineup, this is a god-awful defensive team. Like, terrible. Bottom 3, bottom 5 in almost every category in the league. You take the only NHL caliber center out. It's still hockey. Anything can happen. It's just really hard to see how they win this game without Hellebuck putting up 40 saves. So I think, on the Winnipeg side of things, obviously I love Hellebuck in this game. 1, he's cheap. 2, he should see a ton of volume. I mean, Calgary's not a team that we normally rely on for a lot of volume, but like I said, Winnipeg allows a lot of shots, and without Scheifele in there, it's just going to make matters worse. So Hellebuck is a favorite goalie of mine on the slate. I do love that Calgary second line. It had been a bad line most of the year until Mangiapane joined it. I want to say after Christmas, but again, like what happened 7-8 months ago, I don't really remember. But after he joined that line, like their numbers improved drastically. And it eventually got to a point where, I guess you wouldn't say they are better than their top line. So, they might take the tough matchup, quote unquote, whether it's Wheeler and Perreault and Ehlers or whatever. But it doesn't really matter in the matchup on this game. I really don't think it matters. I'm going to try to avoid the ownership, so I'm going to load up mostly. The way I'm attacking it is this. I do have some Hellebuck. I have some Calgary 2, and then just full-on Calgary power play stacks. I don't have much for just Calgary 1, just that line. Okay. You know what I mean? I almost everything I have with them has either one of Kachuk or Gustafsson, if not both of them. So it's kind of where I'm going with this game. I don't have a ton of interest on the Winnipeg side. Ehlers is a guy I wouldn't mind one-offing, like if him or Kopp, honestly, because I think, and Wheeler and Connor are going to get any ownership that's going to be there. I could see Ehlers and Kopp both at 1-2%, if not less, especially Kopp. And they're both not bad players. And Ehlers especially is good enough to create a goal on his own, and he might have to do that depending on who's in the lineup. So I have a couple of one-off Ehlers. I do like Hellebuck. I'm mostly on Calgary 2 or the Calgary power play in this game.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on most of that. I like the one-off Ehlers call. We'll see if these lines are correct for Winnipeg. Again, get in Slack if you're not and you have a membership. It's really valuable, especially for NHL.
Yeah, I hate to cut you off. I just want to mention that if we do get a line of like Ehlers, Connor, and Wheeler, like that'd be something I would play.
3 wings,
like absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't just X out the Jets completely and say, I'm not going to play Winnipeg today. Winnipeg's completely pushed out of mind. Don't do that. Let at least wait to see what the warm-up's going to look like. Let's see who's in. Let's see who's out. Because if they do stack a top line, like let's say Laine's healthy and it's Wheeler, Connor, Laine. Let's say Laine's out and it's Wheeler, Connor, Ehlers. It doesn't matter which one it is. If they only have 3 good, healthy forwards left and they put them all on the same line, I'm probably going to play that line because they're going to be single-digit percentage, probably under 5%.
Yeah, and I mean the individual percentages, like people might play Ehlers one-offs, they might play Wheeler one-offs, or two mans with Wheeler Connor, but the individual, like the ownership as a whole for a brand new combination is always so low, even if it's the first game of the slate. So just be willing to react. Like you could play 5% of that line if it is the one you're suggesting, and have 3 times the field.
That's the thing I wanted to mention too, is that you don't need to go out and run 30% Winnipeg 1 if they stack that line. You can go out and go 5% and probably be overweight on the field. So you don't need to go hog wild. But if they do stack the top line, I would definitely have a share or 2 of them.
Yeah. On the Calgary side, like they're popular, as you mentioned, but I think for good reason. Although I think I'm going to be over on the second line and then under on the top line. So still probably going to be in double digits on both. But looking at how my exposures are shaping up right now with the ownership projections on the site, I don't think there's a big difference between the lines. I get that you get full power play correlation on the top unit, the top line, and that's attractive to a lot of people. But I think the second line is arguably better at 5-on-5, and they're both going to play a bunch. So just going with the under own Calgary 2 is what I like. Do we know that, and apologies if you mentioned this, do we know the situation with the power play for Geo and Gustafsson? Is it actually going to be Gustafsson on top power play?
I mean, he was all last game.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it's going to be the same. I mean, our ownership isn't super high on Gustafsson, but I imagine he's going to end up, somewhere in the neighborhood of Gaudreau and Monahan and all them.
Yeah.
One final thing I wanted to mention on Calgary is when they get to empty net situations, they have to defend. Lindholm sits on the bench and Kachuk gets on the ice. So that's another reason why even in my Calgary, whatever Calgary 1 stacks I have, almost all of them have Kachuk, is because he plays with them on the power play and he plays with them with the empty net. That's just too many good scoring opportunities to pass up to leave him off that stack.
Yeah, love it. I really, really like Calgary here. Everyone does. So not saying anything crazy. I don't think you need to go below the second line with Milan Lucic and Sam Bennett and those kind of cats.
No, but I wouldn't, if you want a one-off Dubé or something like that, because you need a cheap guy and Calgary should put up some goals. Like I have no problem with that. I wouldn't outright stack the line as a threesome though.
Agreed. We're probably done with this game. You kind of mentioned Hellebuck, and you alluded to his upside. $7,100 here. He's probably one of the higher upside goalies. If Winnipeg wins this game, he's pretty likely going to get the 35 save bonus. And if he somehow pulls a shutout, you might really, really need Hellebuck to compete in this slate. Yeah,
and don't forget with the overtime rules, the round robin games have the regular season overtime rules, which means 3-on-3 and then a shootout. The playing games don't. They're continuous 5-on-5. So teams like Winnipeg, Calgary, Chicago, Edmonton, in theory, their goalies have much higher upside than anybody from Dallas or Vegas or Tampa or Washington, because they could go 2 overtimes, 3 overtimes or whatever and pile up 50 saves or 55 saves or whatever. So just keep that in mind when you're picking your goalies.
All right, let's go to the Capitals and the Lightning. This is a round robin game. Both these teams are going to live to fight another day no matter what happens over the next week. 2.9 implied total for the Caps, 3.2 for the Lightning. Holtby and Vasilevsky are your goalies. One piece of news that we did get a little bit earlier is that Steven Stamkos is out. These lines on the screen, I'm not sure if they're confirmed, but this is kind of the best guess we've got. Point Palat and Kucherov. I know they skated together in the last game some. And then Cirelli, Killorn, they were with Stamkos before. We've got Tyler Johnson in there, so double center on the second line. What are your thoughts on these Tampa Bay lines as far as what they're going to do without Stamkos? And then do you like anything on either side?
I think I have one-off Vrana in 20 lineups, and that's all I have from Washington. Like I said, these round robin teams, I just can't see them having a ton of interest in playing. And I just don't think Washington's a good team in general. That wasn't a team that I played a lot during the season. I mean, I did obviously. It has Alex Ovechkin and Vrana and a great power play. And Carlson. You're gonna play those guys, but they're not a team that I'd avoid. They're 100% a team I would stack against. The line of Wilson, Kuznetsov, and Ovechkin is atrocious, like brutal. Like I'm talking 44% shot attempt share, like 43% expected goal share, like 43% goal share. Like whether you talk about what is expected to happen with expected goals or what actually happened with actual goals, they just got throttled all year long. And I like if Point Kucherov and Palat go up against them, even in what is a nothing game, they should roll them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Point Palat, I shouldn't say people. Someone might think that just because Stamkos isn't on that line, that it's not nearly as good of a line anymore. Where the Kucherov Point Plot line is just absurdly talented. They're my like they're my of the four playing. I think there's only four round robin teams. Yeah, four round robin teams today playing. Tampa Bay is the only one I have any exposure to, so I'll say that much. Like I said, Ovechkin, Wilson, and Kuznetsov are terrible defensively. 2.8 expected goals against per 60 minutes. I think the league average is somewhere like 2.26. Mm-hmm. So like they're nowhere close. And Braden Holtby is starting. Like they're stuck with Holtby because Samsonov's not even in Toronto. I don't even know who is it. Landon Bowe is the backup, or is that the guy in Dallas? Anyways, doesn't even matter. Like Holtby's been bad for 2 or 3 years now. That Kuznetsov, Wilson, Ovechkin line is bad. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm not gung-ho on stacking teams in the round robin games, and I'm not. Like I said, I have no Washington. We're going to get to Dallas Vegas later. I have no Dallas. I have no Vegas. But I do have a lot of the Point Kucherov plot line because this is just an unbelievably good matchup for them. We saw them throttle a bad defensive team in Florida in their one exhibition game last Wednesday or whatever it was. So at least we know they can put up goals against a bad defensive team. This is just another bad defensive team. So I'm going to have quite a bit of that Tampa Bay top line.
Yeah, top line, top power play. I mean, you take out Stamkos, so that's a little bit of a downgrade. Downgrade, obviously, on the power play, but that opens up whether it's going to be Johnson or someone else getting top power play time. So I like the full stack still, makes it cheaper. And it makes my decision a little bit easier as far as what I want to do with Tampa. So top line, top power play. They're not my highest owned stack, but if their ownership sticks to where it's at right now, for Point and Kucherov especially, I'm probably going to be around double the field or so, even playing a spread out approach. Not crazy about the caps here. I'm almost never crazy about the caps. They don't have a ton to play for, like you mentioned. And there's not really a matchup that I love. If Kuznetsov, Ovi, and Wilson do get the point line, I think they're going to have a very, very, very tough time.
Yeah, and I mean, I do like the Backstrom, Oshie, Vrana line, just generally speaking. But Backstrom, you're probably relying on 3 assists from him to really reach value for a GPP. And Vrana doesn't play on the power play with them. So, it's one of those things where if I was going to stack the Backstrom, Oshie, Vrana line, I'd probably add Ovechkin and Carlson and just make it a full power play stack because if they put up 4 or 5 goals, they're not all going to be even strength goals. They're going to have to get in on the power play. So if I was going to stack Washington, I'd lean towards the power play. But like I said, in 20 lineups, I have one off Vrana, and that's all I have from the Caps.
Vasilevsky at 7,800, probably not going to see a ton of volume. That's the only issue I have with him. I like to correlate goalies when I can. I don't know how much Vasilevsky I'm going to get to. Probably not going to be too many of my Tampa stacks if I can avoid it here. Hedman at 6K, not a bad price, and especially if you are going with some sort of Tampa Bay 1 or Tampa Bay power play stack. Yeah, throw in Hedman when you can. I've just got a couple guys, 3 guys actually, that I like a little bit better than him. So Gio, I think I really like as a one-off. and then Shea Theodore and Clefbaum if they're assuming Theodore like Vegas doesn't pull their starters or something before the game, which could happen. It's probably going to happen in one of these round robin games. A bunch of guys just get late scratched.
I mean, if a team goes 0-2 or something like that, and they get to the third game and they know they're seeding already, what would be the point, right? Like that's definitely going to happen.
Exactly. All right, let's move it on to.
Oh, just one final thing I want to mention. Sorry, Carlson was a game time decision. We expect him to play, John Carlson, because he practiced on Saturday. If for some reason he doesn't, Dmitry Orlov was running the second power play unit in their last game, so I'd expect he takes the top power play if Carlson doesn't play.
$3,500 there for Orlov, not too bad of a price. Let's go to Dallas and Vegas. 2.7 implied total for the Stars, 3.1 for the Golden Knights. Actually, really quick, someone's saying in chat, Carlson's out. Is that unless that just happened now? I didn't see anything about that.
I haven't seen anything.
I don't see it, but we'll just keep moving along, and if we find anything, if there's a source there, then we will circle back to that.
Okay.
Bishop and Leonard, 2.7 implied goals for the Stars, 3.1 for the Knights here. No Pacioretty for the Golden Knights. I'm not sure. Well, something was going on with him when they were doing the second training camp, and then he got hurt, I guess, in practice. But anyways, Pacioretty's not going to play. They need him healthy for the next round. Anyways, this is another round-robin game. Anything you love here? I know you mentioned you're not crazy about the round-robin teams, but decent total here for Vegas, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I should probably explain it better than just saying I don't want to play round-robin teams. That's part of it. That's definitely part of it. Like, I truly believe that, these teams don't want to go all out and potentially injure themselves, just to play the Islanders instead of Columbus or something. Dallas and Vegas wouldn't play him, but you know what I mean. But the thing with Dallas is that when Rick Bowness took over, remember I'm sure people probably forget because feels like a lifetime ago. Jim Montgomery was fired in December, and Rick Bowness was hired as the coach of the Dallas Stars. After that point, the Dallas Stars were one of the slowest paced teams in the league. Now, the way I determine pace is adding shot attempts for plus shot attempts against per 60 minutes. And you can do the same thing with expected goals for and against. So I looked after Christmas because I wanted to get a recent snapshot, just before the season ended, but also wanted to give them some time to acclimate under Bowness. Dallas was 24th in pace, tied for 24th in pace in the league after Bowness took over, tied with the Columbus Blue Jackets. And if you look at their expected goals for and against after Rick Bowness took over, they're 29th. They're just ahead of Ottawa and someone like Arizona, I believe. So this is legitimately one of the slower paced teams in the league, and they're doing so on purpose. This is a drastic change at least from early in the season, what Montgomery was doing with them. Montgomery was trying to get them to score more, play a little higher pace, throw the puck around a little bit more in the offensive zone, things like that. Bowness isn't having any of that. So he helped them defensively, which has helped them win games, but he's hurt them offensively. And all we care about for DFS is offense. We don't care how good that team is defensively. I don't care if they give up 1 goal a game for the entire playoff run. If they don't score 4 goals a game, I don't care what they do. That's just, that's what we do in DFS. So I have no interest in the Dallas Stars because they play at such a slow pace, and Vegas is the best defensive team in the league, if not one of the top 3 or 5. So I'm just completely out on Dallas. If you want to do something crazy like a power play stack, fine. I'm not going to say no, but I'm just completely out on the Dallas Stars for this. I don't even care what their prices are. I know Radulov is like 4,200 or something like that, which is crazy considering he had back-to-back 70-point seasons. But I honestly can't even argue with that pricing because of what Bowness has done to this team. He's just crippled them offensively. He's neutered their offense. Like, there's just nothing to get excited about in the offensive zone with this team. So I'm completely out on Dallas. But like I said, he's made them good defensively. So how high am I going to be on Vegas here? Especially with Chandler Stevenson and Max Pacioretty spot. That doesn't really want to make me play that line. Drop down to the next line. Now you're worrying about broken power play correlations and stuff like that. I think this just play that everything I see in this game just screams like 1-1 shootout, 2-1 overtime or something like that. I just have no interest. Maybe once I start adjusting lineups, maybe I'll get to a one-off here or there, like a one-off Alex Tuck, I think might be fine or something like that. Other than that, I'm just completely out.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is really tough to get to, especially when you look at their projected ownership. So if it sticks anywhere above double digits, I'm probably out on Dallas for the most part, outside of some like deep MME flyer lines, just because they're cheap and that's what's making it look like they're going to be popular. But the matchup sucks, as you said. Even without Pacioretty in the lineup, like got a lot of faith in Carlson, Stone, with Chandler Stevenson as their other guy on the line. And that's kind of a line that I'm getting to a little bit. People are probably going to leave off Stevenson. I know he's not great, but 3,200. If he can somehow chip in, Carlson and Stone probably going to be doing the majority of the scoring most often, but he's under 3%, and I'm probably going to have more than 3% of that top line. The second line, I think they're okay as well, but they're getting a little bit more popular than the top line. So I just wanted to make sure I was pointing out what I was going to do with Vegas 1 here. It's Vegas 1 on your screen. It depends on, because Carlson, Pacioretty, Stone were Vegas 2 for a while on some lineup sites. But Vegas just has a really good top 6. So whatever way you look at it, I like the Carlson line and the Stastny line to some extent. And then I'm going to play a bunch of Shea Theodore at 6,300. We've got him at pretty low ownership. So anytime that's the case, I'll play him for 6,300 a bunch here. Pricing looks to be pretty soft against the across the board here. Alec Martinez was another guy I think I highlighted in the cheat sheets. Martinez or Schmidt, I mean, right next to each other in price, probably both going to get secondary power play time. I like them both as mid-tier D-men. And then surprised that Heiskanen is getting 7-8% ownership here. He's a guy that I might play a little bit of at 4,200, just really talented. But I don't know that this game is going to suit his skill set, or really that Dallas is going to suit his skill set with how slow they're playing. So,
yeah, I mean, and I guess 2 guys I have written down from the Dallas side. One is Bishop, obviously. Dallas does play to a slow pace, but Vegas is one of the best teams in the league at generating shots. So maybe Bishop could see 30 to 35 shots here in this game against a Vegas team that seems to do pretty well against breaking through against top defenses. And Steven Johns is the other guy. People might not remember him. He missed, I think, 2 years with concussion problems. He came back not long before the break. This is a guy, he's a threat for the combo meal. We talk about the combo meal, which is five shots to get the bonus plus 3 blocks to get that bonus as well. Johns isn't a huge volume shooter, but I think he's at like 1.6 or 1.7 per game with, nearly 2 blocks per game. So at 3,400, he's definitely a threat for the block bonus going up against Vegas, even though he's on the third pair. Maybe he can sneak out a combo meal every once in a while. I don't know. But him and Bishop are the 2 guys that I have circled from Dallas.
Yeah. Hopefully Johns doesn't get in a fight in one of his first games back, like Michael Furlan. I mean,
yeah, that was stupid. And then there was somebody that got in a fight in one of the exhibition games before even the play-in. You know what I mean? It was the last game before the exit. And I'm just like, why are you fighting before the playoffs?
It's crazy. That seemed like almost premeditated last night with Furlan and Foligno. Did they plan on that?
Maybe there's something going on. I have no idea, but because Foligno used to play in Buffalo, and if I'm not mistaken, and then Ferland was in Carolina. So maybe there's something that happened in the Eastern Conference. I don't know.
All right, let's go to Montreal and Pittsburgh. 2.4 implied total for the Canadiens, 3 for the Penguins. Carey Price and Matt Murray probably going to be your starters here. They started last game. Both teams had a great chance to win. Montreal ended up stealing the game, quote unquote, on the road here. So Pittsburgh going to get last change. I don't think they're going to change too much in terms of their lineup. I would imagine their top 6 stays the same. Looking at the numbers, it's just one game, but they're going to see the same team, same matchups. Pittsburgh's top 2 lines played pretty well at 5-on-5. Ton of shot attempts for Crosby and Malkin. Power play, even strength. So if you were on Pittsburgh last game, I wouldn't say you need to get off of them just because they ended up losing. Price played pretty well. But what are you doing here with Pittsburgh? I think, are you wearing a Montreal Canadiens jersey? There you go. All right, so take his advice with a grain of salt, but what do you got in this game?
Well, hey, I thought Pittsburgh was going to sweep in 3, so can't call me a homer. So on this game, one thing that we talked about before we came on the air here was the ice time from the first game. And the thing that stood out, now obviously they went to overtime, pretty deep in overtime, I think. It was about halfway through the period, a little bit even more than that. Nick Suzuki, the rookie, led their forwards in ice time. He had over 23 minutes, I believe. And if I'm not mistaken, he was 3rd on the team in ice time behind just Shea Weber, or 4th on the team behind Shea Weber, Ben Sherrod, and Jeff Petrie. So, it seems pretty obvious that Suzuki is going to get a ton of run against the Penguins, and they're going to play him all over the place, on the power play, even strength, second line, fourth line, top line, wherever. It just seems they're trying to stuff him as many minutes as they can, and it's kind of hard to blame them. I like Phil Deneau a lot, but he's more of a defensive center. I like Max Domi a lot, but he's got real serious defensive issues. Nick Suzuki is a dynamic offensive player, and he's responsible in his own end. That's why they're playing him so much, and that's why he's so versatile all over the lineup. So Suzuki is a guy I love today as a one-off. He's one of my favorite one-offs on the entire slate, just because, he'll be, like I said, he'll be playing all over the place. He'll be on the power play. He could play 18, 19 minutes. And for a guy that's priced, at the 4K mark, a little under 4K, I believe, that's just too cheap to pass up. The Pittsburgh side of things, you're right. They I don't want to say Carey Price stole that game from Montreal, but Pittsburgh was a better team pretty much the entire game. They deserved to win. They just did, obviously couldn't pull it out. That second line with Rust and Malkin, I thought Malkin looked great. That was one of the things I was worried about for Pittsburgh coming into the series, because, we've seen it from Malkin before. When he's on his game, he's probably the best player in the world. When he's not, sometimes he can be a little bit of a liability. He was on his game in game 1, and if he brings that again in game 2, I don't know how they're going to keep him off the score sheet. So I do have quite a bit of Malkin and Rust. Mostly I'm just mixing and matching with their power play units. Malkin, Rust, and Crosby, or Gensel, Malkin, and Crosby, or Crosby, Gensel, and Rust. Letang, sneaking Letang in every once in a while. I'm pretty much just mixing and matching the top power play unit. That's the direction I'm going to go with Pittsburgh on this slate. On the blue line, Marino and Pettersson played a lot of minutes for Pittsburgh. Those two should play the most minutes just behind Letang. Marino, it seems like they really trust him to play almost any situation at any time. So he's not necessarily punt value. He's not a $2,700 defenseman or something, but he's one of the cheaper guys I do like today. And I am going to have some shares of Carey Price, because I think we're going to see kind of a repeat in this game where Pittsburgh puts up 35 shots or, something like that. And, hopefully Price can get us a save bonus and do right by us again here tonight.
Do you have one thing I was going to ask you about is the power play for Pittsburgh? Obviously stacked top unit. I saw some lineup sites have Hornquist on top power play, but he didn't play there at all last game. And
I don't.
then is it going to be Rust, or I think it was either Rust or Zucker was on it all game last game.
Yeah, I don't know why some spots have Horkvist, like you said, on the top unit. He didn't play there. If I'm not mistaken, Zucker had the first two power plays or three in that game, and then Russ played the rest of them. So my assumption is that it's going to be Russ just because he was on the final 3 or 4 power plays, I think, for that team the other night on Saturday night. So Rust is the guy I'm assuming he's is on the power play, but I'm still gonna have Zucker in some lineups just in case A, he ends up on the power play, B, it just makes sense as part of the stack.
Yeah, nice little nugget there. Those are the kind of things that if you're playing a bunch of lineups, if you make that play over the long term, you make those edits and don't put in the wrong line combinations, you're probably going to come out ahead in NHL DFS. So just be aware of that. I'll try to get that fixed in the projections. I'll make a note of that because I usually just go off of what wherever we get wherever FC gets their lineups, and then make some manual adjustments if need be. I'm not going to too much here on the Montreal side. The top line played well because they seemingly always play well. They weren't very stout defensively, but I think they're going to have a tough time containing Crosby, Gensel, and Sheary again. Sheary's picking up some ownership. So right now I'm not overweight on either Pittsburgh line. I'm kind of falling a little bit underweight just because they look to be really popular. Power play is another way to get somewhat different. Like they'll be one of the more they'll be one of the more popular power play stacks, but I think it makes sense here if you want to go with the full 5-man, throw in Zucker or Rust, and then just hope for the onslaught here. Because if Carey Price has a bad game, Montreal's probably going to get smoked at least one game in this series. So Pittsburgh's got their power play working. Crosby and Malkin were both very aggressive. Pretty scary to be underweight here, but that's where I'm at, unfortunately. And then I actually do have quite a bit of Montreal 1, and I think a lot of that has to do with, I run some lineups with correlated goalies, a lot of lineups with correlated goalies, and Price is coming up as a very good value. If he wins the game and Montreal scores 3 goals, I'm guessing Montreal 1 is playing pretty well once again. So they're just cheap. They go well with Price if you've got the stones to do that again. So really love Gallagher at 5,900 per usual. Don't love any of these other Montreal lines. And then, I don't know, do we need to mention like Pittsburgh 3, McCann, Hornquist? Is that something you're interested in at all?
I mean, I think I have some one-off McCann, and I honestly don't know why I have one-off McCann. Like that's not something that I remember popping up a lot in my crunches from earlier in the season. But I think I'm like 15% one-off McCann, so I think I'm going with that. Um, I I don't even hate it because the Montreal depth isn't very good defensively. It's mainly the top line and possibly the second line that you have to worry about. So I actually don't even hate one-offing Hornfist, even though we don't think he's going to be on the power play, or one-offing McCann, or one-offing Marlowe. Even Marlowe, as bad as he is, it's just because the Montreal third and fourth lines and Montreal third pair, that's where they're really, really vulnerable to be attacked.
Yep. All right. Any defensemen we should mention here? Letang, obviously the top power play quarterback, but he's 6,800. Shea Weber's the guy that I think I'm going to get to in some one-offs. I'll probably get to in some of my Montreal 1 stacks, correlates with Tatar and Gallagher on the power play. And then Petrie, was there something about him possibly getting suspended? Did he have an incident or something? I heard some incident with Petrie in the context of
I
Matt Tkachuk,
haven't
so.
seen anything.
Okay.
I mean, he scored the game when he scored the overtime goal, so it's not like he was kicked out.
Okay, yeah, because I read it was just a headline. I didn't click on the article, but now I'm thinking about it after seeing his name, and so don't listen to what I just said there. Petrie should be good to go, 4,300.
Ben Sherrod is another guy I like. He played nearly 20. He played almost 29 minutes the other night, just 2 minutes less than Petrie in the overtime game. He's pretty cheap. If I'm not, I think he's with Petrie on the second power play unit, or is he by himself?
We're showing that.
Any,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Anyways, just Sherrod will probably play 24 minutes here tonight, and a guy at his price range, he could easily end up blocking 3 shots. And he's a guy that seems like he's turned it on offensively since he came to Montreal. He's trying to show a different dimension. So I do have a little bit of one-off bench Sherrod here tonight.
Ben in chat asks, is Dumoulin okay as a random cheap D, or are there better 3K defensemen?
I like Dumoulin. I have some Dumoulin in my lineups here tonight. So the thing, people try to, and I don't mean to say this because I know he's just asking a question, but once you get down to a defenseman that's about 3K on DraftKings, there isn't a whole lot separating them. Like basically, you're just looking at that point. Are they A in the lineup? B going to get decent amounts of ice time? Mm-hmm. And with Dumoulin on the top pair with Letang, he's going to get a decent amount of ice time. So I have no problem with him.
Yeah, maybe you get that block shot bonus. Donk and assist, like all these guys are mostly the same. Every once in a while there will be an egregiously priced guy that's going to play top power play or something. You find out after the salaries come out, but for the most part, I think I agree with you. Just kind of spread out your exposure to the cheap flyer defenseman, like in Dumoulin's price range. All right, let's go to the last game of the night. Quick before we do, if you guys, 142 of you, if you guys could hit the like button, that would help us out immensely. We're doing this for free, and just get excited that NHL DFS is back. So 2.9 implied total for the Hawks, 3.2 for the Oilers. Corey Crawford and Mikko Koskinen are your expected goalies here. I suppose they could go back to Smith. It's not like Koskinen lit the world on fire either, but he did, I guess, give him a chance after Smith was atrocious. Actually, I don't even know. Was he even that bad, or was Edmonton that bad in front of him?
I mean, Edmonton did play well. That's something that I think people, kind of I understand making fun of Smith. Don't get me wrong. I did that too. And especially it's because of the puck handling thing, right? One of the reasons why coaches always say they put Mike Smith in the lineup is because he can handle the puck. And while the first time he handles the puck, he caused a goal against, right? It seems like that happens too much for goalies. Just don't play the puck. Anyways, I can't see them going back to Smith. I don't think he played as bad, but there was definitely at least 2 goals that I thought he should have had. I mean, the first one he directly caused against, and I think it was the 4th one. Anyways, I just can't see, how do you go back to him? He let in 5 goals and you pulled him. And you need to win 3 of the next 4 games to get to the playoffs. How do you possibly give Smith a second chance? You can't afford to go down 2-0 here, so I'm assuming it's going to be Koskinen.
Yep. Edmonton, pretty embarrassing loss. First round, as you mentioned. Do you think there's any chance they switch up lines here? Last game, when things got down to the end, McDavid and Draisaitl were going to see time together. I think it was McDavid, Draisaitl, and Yamamoto saw a few shifts, maybe in the second or third period. How are you treating this Edmonton game? Because we're not going to know. We have no clue what the lines are going to be and might not even know going into the game. And even if we do know going into the game, they might not matter if they get down 2-0 again or 3-1 or something early, which certainly could happen.
And it's the last game of the night. Everything else is going to be locked, right? So it's not like you're going to, if you swap, you're going to have to swap the players from the same team. Yeah. So the way I'm approaching it is I'm really focusing on, it's the Edmonton power play that is doing it. I don't think I have any Zach Kassian. I'm 30% Edmonton power play, 0% Zach Kassian today.
Goose last game hurt me immensely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have a lot of the Edmonton power play, and one of the reasons is because nobody plays Alex Chiasson. Nobody plays him. He's always single digits when McDavid will be 30% and Chiasson will be 5. I forget what he was the other day, but he was single. I believe he was single digits. So he's a guy I put into a lot of Draisaitl and McDavid stacks just to get a little bit different. I do have a lot of Edmonton. I'm going back to the Chicago too well on the Chicago side of things. The Kubalik Taves Saad line is a good line, but the Nylander Strome Kane line I think is just as good. And they're going to get considerably less ownership. So I'm not stacking them as a 3-man unit. I'm doing a lot of like Strome and Kane plus Keith, or Strome and Kane plus Taves, or Kirby Dach and Kane and Keith. Like Kirby Dach is a guy I love in this game. Third line center, 3,300, I believe. He played a ton of minutes in their first game. Like he played 2 more minutes than Taves in their first game. He plays on the top power play unit. So Kirby Dach, I have a lot of like Dach and Taves with Kane and stuff like that. So I'm focusing mainly on the top 2 power play units in this one, because I feel like this is going to be a wildly popular game to pick from. And you're going to have to get a little bit different than just outright stacking, Draisaitl, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins or something like that.
Yeah, and I know this game's popular, but I'm going to have a lot of ownership probably on both sides just to give myself late swap opportunities. So if you're around at 10 Eastern and the lines come in and there's something funky on Edmonton, or you need to swap off of them if something goes nuts, or you completely miss on something in the early game, like if you're a single lineup or 3-entry guy, if you miss on your stack early, you're probably going to want to swap off of the chalk Edmonton here to give yourself a chance at cashing or Hail Mary compete in a GPP, something like that. So there's going to be a lot of ownership, but I think it makes sense to have a bunch of exposure here. Edmonton one of my favorite stacks, really the power play. So do what you want with Cassian. I'll play some Cassian probably with McDavid and Nugent Hopkins, just because maybe the game log watchers will see that he had a 0. He's not actually that terrible of a DFS player.
No, he's not a bad player.
So 3,400, if he's going to get left off a ton, he's played with McDavid quite a bit, so I'm somewhat confident they keep him together, even if Nugent Hopkins, I would love to see Edmonton go back to Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and Yamamoto. That line was legitimately one of the best lines in the NHL for a month straight, even when McDavid came back. And that could happen, but maybe they don't do it tonight. Edmonton's not the sharpest in anything, really. I don't know. Edmonton makes all the sense in the world here, so I might get to them if I was playing just one lineup tonight. Certainly going to get to them playing at all stakes. I think if they got this power play working again, they're going to smash Chicago, like what I was saying with the Montreal game. If Pittsburgh's got it working, they're just going to take an L 1 or 2 games in this series, and I think that could be the case here for Edmonton. I like them over Chicago. One stack I like for the Blackhawks, you mentioned Dach. I like Dach to Brinkat, and then one of Kane or Taves or Kubalik or something like that. I think that's going to be a pretty low-owned trio. You could throw in Keith if you'd like. Chicago didn't look too bad in the first game. A lot better than what I gave them credit for. They have games like that, though. I don't think it's the experience. I just think that they're kind of all or nothing when they're capitalizing on their chances, because they're going to get them. When they're capitalizing, they look really scary, but I don't think they're going to keep that up.
I mean, that was the thing heading into the series that I was surprised about the most, was how little of a chance people are giving Chicago. Like, they outscored Edmonton at 5-on-5 this year, flat out. They were a better 5-on-5 scoring team than Edmonton was. And think about that. When you think they had Leon Draisaitl with 115 points and Connor McDavid with 101 or whatever it was, or 102, and Chicago still outscored them at 5-on-5. Like, this isn't a bad offensive team. They're a bad defensive team, but they still allowed fewer goals after Christmas than Edmonton did. Like, these teams aren't that far apart. Like, I get it. There's Draisaitl, there's McDavid. Like, these guys are great. These teams are pretty evenly matched. Like, Edmonton has an edge. They should win this series, but it's not a massive edge.
Yeah. With the top power play, you mentioned Chase on. I'm going to limit my exposure. Otherwise, he always grades out as a good value for us. So you got
You could have 100% Chase
like
on.
yeah. I mean, that's like legitimately what you could have. Points per dollar wise, he's going to grade out really well. And if you do the power play stack, yeah, FC's just going to throw in the $2,700 Chase on because it works. But just make sure you know what you're doing if you're just running crunches. Maybe get Chase on in quite a few of those. But I'm going to try to limit his exposure so he's not up near the top. Clefbaum, I'll take as much as I could possibly get. He wasn't as aggressive as I would have liked to see in the first game, but just the Edmonton power play looks to be in too good of a spot to avoid him. Mentioned Keith. I also don't mind Connor Murphy, but his price is all of a sudden up to $4,700.
Yeah, I somehow I ended up with I was doing my crunches before the show. I still ended up with a lot of Connor Murphy, and I if you look at his ice time, he only played a little bit less than Duncan Keith in the first game, I believe. Mm-hmm. So, maybe you could play him. I'm definitely paring back how much Connor Murphy I have. I'm not going to this slate with 30% Connor Murphy.
No.
But I think still like earlier in the season, I think Ethan Bear is a guy that gets really underrated. He's a very good puck mover. He's often on the ice with the top line. So if you're throwing in some, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins or whatever, if you want to get a little bit different, having Ethan Bear over Clefbaum is one way I would go.
I like it. That's going to wrap it up for this slate. We are going to have a 2:30 Eastern lock. I'm trying to get all these lock times correct. 2:30 Eastern on DraftKings. SuperDraft, our sponsor. Use promo code Awesemo10 to get $10 in SuperDraft cash. They're going to start with this Caps Lightning game. So they're going to be a little bit shorter slate, and then FanDuel is going to lock with the Vegas Dallas game. So all over the place, got locks all day. Projections will be updated, top stacks, ownership projections if you want a chance to get in on that for a discount. Promo code NHL is back is how you get 50% off your first month of the NHL monthly pass. If you want to purchase that and then buy FC, I think that's a great option. MME or even 20 max in NHL DFS is really, really fun. It's tilting to play one lineup at times. So add on FC after you purchase that. And then we've got the cheat sheets. We've got the player rankings and stack rankings are also free today. Appreciate you guys joining. Cliffy, any last words?
Yeah, make sure you get some one-off Kirby Doc. Let's go, Kirby.
All right, let's do it. We will see you guys back here. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll get Cliffy on a show soon here. Good luck tonight, guys.
Good luck, everyone.